Welcome to this month's very hot Startup Grind Vienna. It's actually not too hot. I'm very glad that so many of you found the way here while it's sunny outside and soccer games are on, so at least there is some interest in our speaker. And our speaker today, and I've heard that Cat was always great. Our speaker doesn't look like that, unfortunately, but he's still quite well known in Austria. So please welcome on stage Andreas, the king of the nerds, or king of geeks. What is it, king of geeks? No royal titles on here. It's not allowed.
No titles. By the way, thank you for coming. I know it's WWDC. Like Apple's conference, developers conference. Nobody? Okay. Because I was like constantly checking the stream. He's as well. Okay.
Andreas, I always start with getting to know you a bit. So where do you actually come from originally? And how did you progress? Where did you go to school? Did you have were your parents entrepreneurs? Like, how did you get into all this mindset of starting stuff? Because we're going to come up to that a bit later.
So the main reason why I want to do Q&A is because I myself am not that interesting, and I guess most of you guys have like projects you're working on and problems you're trying to solve. So my main goal is actually that you take as much as possible away from this talk, and it's not like my goal is not that you leave this place and afterwards know where I was born. It's more like that you know what you could do with your own project. Okay, so this is the reason I want to do more Q&A.
Oh, we keep that quick.
Fair enough.
We keep it quick.
Okay, so my life. Was born in Vienna. The first few years of my life, I was really infantile. Like I was really childish most of the time. Like the first months, I couldn't talk. I couldn't see, I couldn't walk.
I still made it.
Pretty much the only thing I could do was pooping for like months.
I'm still on that stage, but anyway.
And this got better a bit. Like I started walking, I started talking. I regret at least the second one a lot, very often.
You can use enough alcohol, then it goes back.
Okay.
You can try that.
Okay. Part of that, like the average stuff, like I studied in Vienna, Technical University, so software engineering, information engineering. At some point in my university, the life cycle, I was like trying to explain what I'm actually like doing, and it was essentially at the point that I had like 2 companies. And my whole introduction, what I was doing, became like 15 minutes. So I decided that I need to cut a few things. And one of the things I cut at that point was the university. And the other one, which I thank, which I continued, which is great, is the Socialisten, which is like an agency. Back then, it was an agency what we called niche technology for online marketing. So you had back then crazy idea what to do with StudiVZ, MySpace, Facebook apps were coming. Twitter, Foursquare, like you name it, we built it back then. A few months later, or I don't know how much later, like we were actually like quite successful really early on. We had like Axel Springer, Bild-Zeitung, if you guys know this, as a client.
Very small newspaper in Germany.
Yeah, and we brought like a few Austrian players to social media, like Ö3 and those kind of people. Was super successful.
Were you alone, or was it like?
No, I had a partner, Michael Kamleitner, who still to this day runs the company. And actually, I'm very glad because, just looking back, the decisions I made and suggested, and then I started to get out of the company. I'm happy he didn't follow those. So otherwise, I guess the company wouldn't be here anymore. The company is actually doing nowadays really well. They are selling a product called SWOT.io, which is essentially social media management for insanely large companies, like where you have to prove that your boss wanted you to publish something and it's not your fault. So please don't fire me, fire that guy.
One of those things.
Yeah, and it's pretty much everybody's client, like T-Mobile, ORF, Ö3, ÖBB. A lot of companies starting with Ö.
That's in Austria very uncommon. Yeah. How long were you basically part of that story, or like
in startup years, like 5 centuries roughly?
Yeah. Then in reality,
I don't even recall. I was a few years,
a few years, but it wasn't like 3 months. It was a couple of years.
No. We built this. It was nothing in comparison to what it's now. Like Michi did like an amazing job in like actually making it a real company. Mm-hmm. But we were lucky that we back then hit a spot which was like let's say pretty fast developing. Like back then, when we started doing Facebook apps, there were 30,000 people in Austria on Facebook. And we sold our first app for like 5,000 euros. And everybody who knows online marketing is like, I invite you to calculate how much a return of investment this is going to be. But the client was really happy, actually. And this was like early on. And then later on, it got like, who here doesn't know Facebook? It got a little bit bigger. So we were kind of like lucky to ride this wave.
So, but you started another startup.
Yeah. In parallel, so the things that fascinated me personally the most is actually what I call social software. So websites that are like products that enable people to do something together that's like bigger than the sum of the parts. And back then, I met like my future co-founder for like a project called back then GARMS. Back then we had like 3 other names before we stayed with GARMS actually. That was like essentially social software, like crowdsourcing for fashion is like the shortest explanation I have. The idea was like you design, like you draw something, and if enough people like the dress, the jacket or whatever it is, we will actually produce it. So we had like a full production network in Eastern Europe. We produced it and we sold it in the web shop. Made a lot of designers, like early stage designers, really happy because they were able to like come up with ideas or like show their ideas. And actually people, like they build up like a fan audience and they managed to get like their actual products into a shop, which is for every fashion designer a big deal. Our bigger problem was in the end that although we had quite a fast, like back then, like this, we did this for like 4 or 5 years. We raised, I don't even recall, like $1.5 million or something like this. And we had like amazing investors actually. We had the founders of Net-a-Porter as investor, for example. So we're like actually going for higher fashion at some point. Yeah, like in the end, what we figured out for ourselves is number one, that our main problem was like the production line was like always like far behind the development, software development line. So when you like, like you decide to do a pivot, like as a startup, which is awesome, it's a great idea, you change everything. The software is done in a week, and you still receive fashion products for months, which have you decided, like, you don't even remember that you decided that back then, like it's so long ago.
Like, what do we have to do with fashion? And
exactly.
Yeah.
This is number one we learned. Number two, I personally learned is I have no idea about fashion, and I should have never done a fashion startup. Like, and everybody who knew me was like, you have no idea about fashion. I was like, no, it's fine, don't trust me. Yeah, in the end, we were like successful in the sense that we made it, the company, we established it in London. We had like quite some, like, I think we were like in total working on this like 4 years, I think. Got like press and all this kind of stuff, but in the end decided that the whole model is just too complex to iterate fast enough, and then we closed it down in the end.
Who were your co-founders? Was there somebody with fashion experience in there? Or
Yeah, second mistake, no. Yeah, this was like, if you want to learn about from mistakes, like I'm the person you should go to. I think I did them all. Like my co-founders were one person actually into like I would say economics, like the business guy in the team, and the other person was actually strictly speaking designer, like in the meaning of like screen and like art, and had like a strong like connection to fashion, but he wasn't a fashion designer or he wasn't a fashion producer, and like not having this actually as the core DNA of the team, although we had like amazing people joining and amazing people really close to that team, is a huge difference if it's like actually the founder or if it's somebody who is like in the end somebody who you like differently. We were really stubborn, and the only people who were able to stop us were like us ourselves. So
stubbornness is a good thing.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, no. So you already said that you built it up in, or part of it is built it up in London. You started in Vienna or not?
We started in Vienna, yeah.
Why did you move? Like, not that I think that I'm not a big fashion guy, so I don't know about the fashion scene in Vienna. Don't think it's a big one. Why London? Why not New York? Definitely not.
That's a good question, actually. So for us back then, we managed to be in every newspaper, like daily, weekly, monthly in Austria. Nobody outside of Austria noticed. So like people in Germany were like, what the hell are you talking about? People in Portugal, no idea. People in Romania, forget it, So then we said, okay, we need to do more PR. So we did like I did like a lot of aggressive PR in Germany, and we managed to be like in a few newspapers in Germany, and nobody outside of Germany gave a crap. So we were like talking to people in France. Yeah, like here's press, and they're like, we cannot read this. And yeah, at some point we realized like in Europe, like London had this mix of being very strong in the investment side. Back then, like all the strong investors were actually in London. Now, some of them also moved to Berlin, but like back then, everybody was in London. Number 2 was media. Like every media outlet, every media corporation, every publisher is in London, like every international one. And number 3 were fashion. The London fashion scene, or like the fashion weeks in London, are like very, I would say, deterministic for the whole of Europe. And the other good side advantage is like you have a train directly going to Paris. So we had like meetings in Paris all the time. And that was the main motivation for that. So like what we did back then is we kept we closed down the Viennese office and only kept it as a logistics hub. So we had like still all the logistics done from here because we had like an amazing deal and amazing partners. But we moved the organization team to London, and the developer teams like was coincidentally actually Bulgarian, because the CTO was Bulgarian, and he hired like a lot of his friends. So they were like, so we can join you to move to London. It's 3 times more expensive. It's always ugly weather. It's ugly food. Like why should we do that? And then we actually realized it's actually for us back then by far better to have them in Bulgaria and be able to hire also in Bulgaria. And actually pick really talented developers there versus actually trying to find anybody in London.
So, like, was that your first experience with like a distributed team? Because that wasn't easy back then as a couple of years ago. It gets easier nowadays, but still is a big of a... It's an organizational thing.
Let's speak about distributed. Like it's one of my favorite topics. Like for me personally, fully distributed teams is the logical evolvement of digital work.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, it was my personal, I would say, first real experience around this.
What was the main, because that's now already part of like know-how transfer. Like what was the major things that you learned that you should and should not do with a distributed team?
Every problem you have in your process, does everybody know what a fully distributed team is or what a distributed team is? So essentially you don't, like in our case back then we had 2 offices, but like for example now at ProductHunt we have like 1 small office in San Francisco and everybody's actually remote. So the idea is that people work from everywhere. Like in ProductHunt there are people in Belgium, Bulgaria, England, Denver, I don't even know where everybody is. And the number one thing what I learned here is in a normal company, like in a normal office, if you have like broken processes, you can fix it by just having a meeting. So everybody knows this, like, let's quickly discuss this, and then everybody stands up and they go to a meeting room and discuss stuff, which is great because you can like do an initial instantly a meeting, and like you have the feeling you do something because everybody's talking, so it feels like work and it feels good, you know. The downside of this is like everybody has to stop working and nobody's prepared for this meeting and all these kind of things. In a distributed team, any meeting is super expensive to do because it's just pain in the ass to get everybody into like one hangout room and then just like, sorry, can you repeat this? The connection just dropped. And like just explaining stuff in a hangout process is like just more complicated. So what you actually instantly notice is that you can't do all this, I call it like monkey patching of like bad processing. You can't like just constantly, what do we have to do here? Like this kind of stuff, you know, in a normal office, which is great because you can focus on your work, which is bad if you need to focus on like, if you need to like, I don't know, innovate. If you need to come up with like a solution for like a design problem, a solution for a product problem, or you need to like discuss something you actually want to avoid discussing, like whatever, like something harder to discuss. But it's amazing for iteration. So my biggest learning is if you have problems in your process, you will instantly notice as a distributed team, and it actually forces you, even with 5 people, to have like an discussed, decided, and like trusted process.
Would you do instant distributed co-founders? Like when you're co-founding with 2 others, would you do that?
So I would like in general, I would make sure that the team meets each other like often enough, and especially the co-founders. Like that's correct. The people who work closely to each other and usually don't work on like an iterative or like implementation basis, but more work like on product, for example, they most likely need to meet more often. People who have to do like strategic decisions most likely have to meet more often. This doesn't necessarily have to be the co-founders, but it has to be like those people who do that, because you miss a little bit the subtleties of like discussing stuff. You can easily do it like with, I don't know, once a month, once every 2 months. That works perfectly for most people, but you can't avoid it.
Okay, so coming back to this startup, like when you closed down, like how did that happen, and what was your, like what did you do next? Like what was your view? You now had this startup that you decided to shut down. Was it already in the pipe that you want to do? Did you do this, or was it like how did the closing work out, and then what was your personal next steps? Because we already talked about failure.
So my personal next step was getting a backpack and backpacking for a few months. The company itself, like the whole closing process, took years. It was amazingly complex to actually close down the company because we had like several entities in several countries and like a lot of obligations between each other and all this kind of stuff. It was a great way to spend a lot of money on lawyers. By the way, I honestly believe that startups and the whole hype around startups is actually nothing else than a scheme come up by airplane companies and lawyers. I'm pretty sure this is true. Like the money I've spent in my life on lawyers and airplane tickets is beyond absurd. And
you know you're feeding you're feeding that with your product now.
Yeah,
sure, but that's okay. You probably take a cut from every lawyer worldwide. That's fine. Maybe that's the business.
This is how we make money.
Yeah. Okay. So basically a couple of years long it took you, and you spent.
Yeah, like the whole closing down process was on the side, like for years. And me personally, I focused mainly on like essentially freelancing consulting work. Analytics, product development, mostly like coming into companies and like helping with growth, which usually meant actually fixing the product and focusing on retention versus actually focusing on growth, because and I did this for a few years and decided like I want to do something on my own again. We literally rented a house in Cyprus for like a month, and we're like, we will build something. Actually, we built like something. We started building like 1 month before, like a few ideas, and then in Cyprus we were continuing. And the long story, the short story of this is actually that in the end we decided, okay, this is a good idea, but I'm not sure if we actually should pursue it. Like
was it already ProductHunt, the idea? Was it still something else?
No. At that point, like technically, I'm not co-founder of ProductHunt. Technically, I'm founding team. Like I'm one of the first people. Yeah. So Ryan was at that point actually running ProductHunt as like an email newsletter.
Okay.
And or maybe like the first website MVP, something like this. And like when we decided, okay, this is not something we want to really focus on, like our own idea. I at the same moment got also like a request by the tax office to pay like a, let's say, higher sum. And like one of the things I'm really bad in is accounting, and I just didn't expect this. I mean, I expected it, but I didn't prepare. So what I decided is, okay, like I was like, actually Ryan was helping us with the project we were working on, and was like, hey mate, we have to put this a little bit on hold. Like we're not sure how we want to continue, and also like I need to get money. And he was like, that's actually very good, because can you help me, because I have a lot of stuff to do and I think this is going somewhere and I can pay you, it's no problem. I was like, yeah, you can't really pay me because I don't think you have the money. And he was like, how much is your hourly rate? And I was like, yeah, like this is my day rate. And he was like, that I can't do that. So I was like, yeah, I know. So what we decided in the end was like, I will work for him 3 days a week, and 3 days a week I will just work for normal clients. And I expected like that the payment will stop after week 2. In the first few weeks there was nothing but like, actually this was like one of the moments where ProductHunt started working. And in the first few weeks there was nothing but fixing performance problems, fixing like everything was exploding for no reason for like weeks. And this was like my first few weeks were nothing else but emergency work. And meanwhile, like introducing a little bit of process, and like with the other guys who were helping, like a little bit of like coordination. And after a few weeks, we had actually the first time, me and Ryan, to talk about higher level strategic stuff. And I was like, so where do you think this is going? And he was, I think we can get into YC. Like, I think we have a chance to get into YC. And I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know how to tell it, because the application ended, the rejection letters were sent out, and I know this very well because I received 2 of them. So the time has passed. We have to wait a few months. And he said, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, but like 2 of the partners actually approached him, and they were like, hey, this is awesome. Like, is there any way you can think that it would still fit into YC? And I was like, okay, 2 of them, yeah, and they didn't know about each other.
Quick
okay.
one. Everybody knows YC.
Sorry, yeah.
Who doesn't know YC?
Okay, like quickly to explain, this idea of like startup accelerators, like programs that get young teams and like give them connection, network experience, and like just help them like speeding up. This core model comes from a company in San Francisco called, in Silicon Valley, called Y Combinator. And pretty much every other accelerator in the world kind of tried to copy the model. And they are the investors of like everybody. Like Airbnb is like one of their...
Dropbox, Airbnb,
yeah, like
you name it. And every batch there is something that gets then into use quite often afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing an amazing job. So it turns out we actually had a chance to still apply. So we applied like late, and we got in. Then emergency work continued for a few weeks. But I was happy because this meant I actually can, like, I was already working full time, but I actually didn't know how long I can do this without any proper payment. And then at that point I was like, hey, we have some money that we can just work on that for a little bit of time. So demo day is in 3 months, so let's focus on that, you know. And then a few weeks later, he was like, I think I can maybe get some investment. And I was like, cool, how much do you think? Because I wasted a lot of time in my life getting investment. Like, just don't go too high. Just take the money on the table and move on. Let's focus, you know. And he was like, I think I can do like around $1 million. And I was like, holy shit. No, don't do that. Seriously, like, that's the worst idea ever. Like, we will waste so much time. Like, go for 200, 500. Doesn't matter. Like, we will get money later. Doesn't matter. Like, just focus. And he was like, no, I think we can close. Like, I think we would have enough potential to get 1 million. I was like, okay, so how much do you have already committed? Like, just to like, you know, like an answer question.
Yeah, so
like, come on, let's really
show
talk,
me.
you know. And he was like, above 1 million.
Oh fuck!
And I was like, okay, I think we can raise around 1 million. Yeah. This was around like before demo day, and then there was demo day coming up, and we were already in a lucky position that we were able to hire a few people. Like, a good friend of mine from Vienna actually joined during that time, like Lucas Vittel. And like a few other people, and we focused on getting like ready for the demo day. And demo day came, and it was insane because at that point, like everybody who launched on Y Combinator tried to also launch on like ProductHunt, and everybody knew us. So there was like a lot of interest by investors, and we were in a lucky position to close with, I would say, some of the best in the world. So like right now we raised like after demo day like a larger sum, and like the investors we have now on the team are like Andreessen Horowitz, Google Ventures, and to my girlfriend I always have to mention Ashton Kutcher.
Why is that? I don't know.
Yeah,
and looks slightly like him, but it's okay.
A little bit fatter. And uglier actually. But anyway, like we raised like from like some really, really amazing people. Like when we went through the list, I was like, this is the most amazing list to actually like just be really bold when you start fundraising. But it actually turned out that this will be like our final list who we actually got. So we were like in a really lucky position at that point.
So who was in that core like YC team, and like who's in the core team now? Like who's like the people? Like how big is ProductHunt now in terms of people? And
before we jump too far, like, does everybody know here ProductHunt? Like the quick pitch of it is essentially like it's a website where products get launched. So imagine it like a community where people, hey, I found something cool, I will post it on this website, and the other people are like, yeah, that's actually really cool. I will like give it a like, essentially like an upvote, and the best thing of each day gets into a newsletter and gets sent out to like several 100,000 of people. the amazing thing about the website is what we managed to do is that a lot of people from San Francisco and like internationally, like just well-known investors, well-known opinion leaders, well-known journalists, product builders, actually use this site almost daily. So they use it to actually find new stuff, and therefore we managed to get like a lot of people who launched on ProductHunt to actually like to significant amounts of investments.
Okay, I've got a quick question from the audience. Who hasn't got ProductHunt as their start page? For fuck's sake, do it. I've got it. Every day in the morning I'm like,
Yeah.
shit. That's nice.
Just to be a little bit more extreme, we also have a Chrome extension, so every time you open a new tab, you see ProductHunt. It's actually the main way how I personally consume it. It's ridiculous because you open a tab, you type something, mail, you open it, you're like, there was something, you go back, and you're like, hey, that looks cool. Clicking on it, like 15 minutes later, what was the email again? Like
that's why I deinstalled that again.
Yeah.
But
highly recommend.
Not saying anything now. Yeah, so like who was in that YC group? Like was it only?
Yeah, like I think like a good like. We had like a founding team, like Lucas, he had like an offer by like an amazing, like Lucas, his background is actually B2B, like the one guy who joined me back then, like B2B databases. And I was like, can you help me with this? Because it's exploding and I need help. And he's like, I like B2B, this is B2C. And I was like, please. So he was joining us. And then in the end, he actually had the offer of joining one of the most amazing database companies out there right now, before anybody knew them. Like we discussed this like at length, and I was like, please do that because that's perfect for you. And he's now working at like Citrus, which is one of the companies in the database space, out there right now. Additionally, from the founding team, we have like 4 people who were like what we call founding team, and 3 of them are still in ProductHunt. We have very few people who actually joined and left, and who stayed like longer than a few months, just like who actually fit and like then stayed.
Like fit thing.
Yeah. And right now we are like officially like 22 people, but like a lot of those are part-time or interns, because what we do is we have like community people like in different time zones, so that the site doesn't look like the site is actually managed like at different moments of the day. So I think like the full-time equivalent is like around 13, 14.
Okay. So where's ProductHunt? That's basically the last question before we come to Q&A session. So you know. So where's ProductHunt now, and where is it developing? And maybe give us some insight. What's the vision? What you want to be? Mm-hmm. And then there is, I don't know if you can answer this question, the question of monetization. Mm-hmm. And I'd really like to see apart from I think you sell stuff with kittens on top. I don't know.
Yeah, like pretty much everything we do has a kitty on it.
It works. I told you beforehand.
By the way, I have stickers here if anybody wants them afterwards. And this is actually a temporary tattoo. If anybody wants a temporary tattoo, we also have temporary tattoos.
He can actually give you the number, like the contacts of a guy who makes you a real ProductHunt tattoo if you want. So if you're really into it,
please don't.
Yeah.
I actually know people, but don't.
No, I wouldn't do it. But anyway,
like imagine us changing the logo. Then like what do you do?
That's fine. You can tattoo.
Yeah, of course.
You don't have a fully timeline on your arm.
Yeah, no.
In 100 years, you will know exactly.
So what we are right now, I would say, is like, does everybody know here like Reddit? You guys can? Yeah, okay. So imagine the Reddit and the App Store have like an ugly baby. This is currently ProductHunt essentially.
It's not that ugly anymore. But
yeah, fair enough. But like, it's essentially like this is like where we're currently at. So it's like I would say curation, like ranking out of App Store more or less products through the community. Where we're actually moving to, or like where we want to go to, is like we call it like the place to geek out about your next favorite thing. But in the end, it means like right now you have multiple app stores. So you have the App Store for like Apple, like Google's Play Store, Amazon Play Store, PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, and so on, like 15 other ones. And what we want to do is we want to create like a meta level above this. Because people are not like, I need a new iPhone app. They're more like, I need a new calendar app. And the thing is like, right now, you are searching for something, you want to find something, Google completely owns this. Like you want to find something, you think of Google and you type into Google and then you don't find anything because Google actually sucks for finding products, unfortunately. But you will find 10 different blog posts about the 25 best calendar apps. And on the other hand, you have, for example, like the App Store, or you have like Amazon, like you want to buy something, you know? And oddly enough, like only, like when we try to compare us to Amazon, or when we try to work with Amazon, like only 10% of the posts, the products we actually have, they have something, like they have this in their store, because most of the stuff we actually have on the website is digital products and they don't feature that. On the other hand, you have the normal app stores like Apple App Store, where it's really, really hard to actually find anything. And so what we want to do is we want to be like this layer on top of this, where you actually are like finding, like you find the stuff. It's curated in a form that you actually find the most useful stuff. You see what your friends and the people you actually think highly of recommend, and you, if it's like, for example, launching it the same day or like something like this, you actually also have the makers there and you can ask them questions. So the core idea behind it is actually to get like to this Matter social app store. The like this is the higher vision that we want to do. Like our main thinking behind this is like, it's ridiculous that right now it's almost impossible. Like sunrise closes, like there's no longer a good calendar app. Like what should I use? This shouldn't even be a problem. Like I need to do for my new startup, I need to do, I don't know, social media monitoring, but I needed something cheap. This shouldn't be an issue. Like you should instantly find something. And also, like if you work in anything, like if you work for like a travel startup, you should know when one of your competitors pops up. Like it shouldn't be something that your investors send to you. Like this should be something you know they want. So this is where we want to go.
And the monetization?
I was hoping I can avoid this.
Yeah, no worries.
Currently I live in San Francisco. We are trying to avoid those questions. No, it's not true. So like our monetization, there's like a lot of things which we could do. Like we could easily do the eBay model, like different placements, better placements, and promoted banners, promoted products, all this kind of stuff. There's also like the whole idea of affiliate links, which we experiment with. There's the whole idea of actually purchasing through ProductHunt, which we also experiment with. I personally believe that just the fact that you are between a person wanting to have something or finding something and the actual thing is a huge, like this is a very valuable transaction moment. And for example, if like just the fact that we can offer the possibility for discounts or like higher promoted rankings for like other products, this by itself is a huge business. We have two other business models which are more crazy. Like one of them is data, which we have a very good explanation for, but this is more, I don't know, not live stream material.
Okay.
And the other one is also related to purchasing, and it's also not that much live streaming material, but it's this thing we tell the investors, and we also believe, but we need to prove if it's actually true or not, or if it's just like typical startup pitch deck craziness. Yeah.
Something that you say, oh, there's a market, we can serve this market, done.
Yeah,
okay. Exactly. Last question from me before we go over to the audience is, how many applications do you get every day, roughly? For that would interest me personally quite a lot.
So how it works right now is we have like people submit a product, and we have moderators. Some of them are actually employees, some of them are from the community, who then decide what gets featured on the front page. And we have like because we can't show everything, and the main reason is because we have several hundreds per day that gets posted on ProductHunt. So like just to think about this, like every day several hundred new apps, new startups get launched just on ProductHunt. That means like worldwide there's like multiples of that actually getting launched, and like a subset of that manages it on ProductHunt, and we try to feature around 60 to 80 maximum. What we learned is like if we make the number too high, it's just overwhelming. It's just too much. So we try to have some sort of like an curation aspect where we try to focus on the best ones.
Okay, that's about it. For the Q&A session that's starting now, it's our usual procedure, which means that I'd like to give me a hand sign when you have a question. Ask a question. I'm going to repeat it, so we've got it on
I will
live
start
stream.
with a question. Who here works in a startup or like wants to launch a startup? Okay, let's narrow this down. Who here already launched? Okay. Who here did not yet launch? Why? Not ready. Yeah, sure. Too young.
What? Too young. That's yeah.
You? Like, you also said like you didn't launch yet. No, sorry. You was. Sorry. Yeah. Why not yet?
Because I'm still working on the concept.
Okay, fair enough. That's a valid reason. So one thing I learned in ProductHunt is you can reduce so much if you keep the core idea. And like one thing we tried to do with my old startup all the time, we tried to win by being intelligent, essentially, like having an answer for every potential problem. One thing I learned in San Francisco is what you want to be is you want to be fast by kind of being smart, clever, just focusing on something.
Don't be too brainy.
Yeah, don't be too brainy. That's like because like one of the things I like back then, like my last startup is like, it was such a complex mess of like solutions for everything, even for problems don't existing. What we do in ProductHunt really extreme is like we have an idea for like a new feature, new product, whatever, and then we strip it down. And then when we're done stripping down, we actually start implementing. Then we said, okay, we can't do this in this time scope. So we strip more. And then we're like, yeah, we will do this instantly after the launch. Like instantly, like we launch this and then like the next thing we build, like this is so important. Then we launch and we realize we actually don't need it. So we just keep it where it is. The number two thing we always do is like almost everything in the beginning is like done manually. Like in the beginning of ProductHunt, we used to have this saying, ProductHunt is like, everything is manual and there are web servers sending HTML. And this was like true, like it's even true to today. Like we have pretty much everything where like usually people say you can't do this manually because it doesn't scale. We do as long as possible manually, either through the admins. Then if this doesn't work anymore, or like we know what it actually is and like how to do it, we introduce moderation tools so that more people can do this, so like moderators can do this. Then when it's even like needs more scaling, and we find out that's actually something the community can also do and wants to do, we open it up to the community to be able to do this. And then at some point, if we realize we can automate parts of this and it's worth automating parts of it.
Because there is so much demand.
Exactly, then we automate it. So for example, we have like the post pages and there's like related products on the site. To this date, they are still manual. So there's still somebody who said that this is actually related to this product. In the beginning, we started out with like an internal recommendation engine. We liked the results, but they were not amazing. So we're like, cut. Like, let's add a plus button, and let's see if this works. Now we are at the stage that we actually are capable of building, like we were at the stage as well back then, but we didn't have the time for it. But like now we are getting to the point that we have the time to actually build better relationships and like recommendation engines. So we starting to do automate this as well now.
Can we sum it up in, if you believe you're focused enough, then think again and focus again? Yeah. Is it kind of like that way?
I would say yes.
Okay, so question from the audience. Yeah. Quick
hello.
One. Hello.
How are you doing?
It's a good launch. The question is, what is the best day to launch? So we have got it on stream.
So of course, every day is unique and special and perfect.
Oh.
That's the American answer. The European answer is most people use ProductHunt for work in some aspect, even if it's like their own hobby. They just do it professionally, you know, like. But in the end, they use it like usually during the week. They use it Monday to Friday. This is where like, most people are actually on ProductHunt in this. Like a lot of our users are actually checking it multiple times a day. So Monday to Friday, like the weekends are by far weaker. Which of the days is the strongest during the week usually depends. Like I wouldn't launch on an American holiday, for example. These turn out to be as weak as the weekends usually. A part of that, there isn't much magic. Like it really depends on the product usually in that case then.
Maybe a follow up to that one. Like how is the audience split in geographically? Like that's
geographically is I'm losing audience here.
I think they're from the Selenium meetup somewhere.
Geographically speaking, 50% is international in the meaning of like not America. 50% is in America, and out of this, half of that is around Silicon Valley, and the other half is like spread over the rest of America. So there's a high amount of like a high percentage of like people in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, but most people actually assume it's like the majority. It's absolutely not. Like the majority is actually international.
Okay. Next question.
Yes, in the back.
In the back. He's already starting over to. It's great. Can go. Yes, please. So you're basically you talk a little bit processes and she was a bit confused about CTO. What would be your suggestions about processes and product development, like in general for startups when they kick it off?
This sounds like the answer to the question to like if I could nail this answer, like I would nail perfectly startups. So process itself, I strongly believe you need to think of your own company also like a product, and you need to refactor, essentially, like rebuild the processes you have and the hierarchies you have in your company as the company scales. And like a rule of thumb is like every 6 months latest. And a lot of the things that work in small scale don't work in large scale, obviously. But what you should try is, like what we try is have also be aware of like the scale we are at. So we are like let's say 14 people full-time equivalent. You don't need crazy complex processes. You know, like you can like try to focus on the bare minimums of those. Number 2, what I strongly believe of processes is, for example, in development, the goal of the development process is not so much that, for example, I can monitor them like another developer and like look what they are doing. It's by far more around the fact that he or like she can get her work done and make sure that she's fully enabled. That means, for example, we have the policy of you need to review the work of your other developers every morning, which is a very easy rule of thumb. It's like one of the, I would say, 3 rules we actually have. And the main reason why we have this is because if you post something in like if you like I'm trying to speak non-developer right now. It's really hard for me. If you are if you're pushing code for pull request review, like you understand, but like I guess a lot of you don't. But anyway, like as soon as you like make a change and you want to show it to everybody, like to other developers and get feedback on it, anytime in the day, most likely there will be somebody in the other time zone having his morning in the next few hours. So you can expect a turnaround of feedback within 24 hours. And the goal also of this feedback is not so much like the judges evaluating your work and like telling if it's good enough for the sacred production environment. It's much more about the idea, how can I help the person to actually get to the goal better and faster, and making sure that there's like another pair of eyes watching and like checking out if there's any problem. So for example, like a lot of things that we do is you make a comment and you're like, hey, you shouldn't do this because X, Y, Z. But you still give you okay, like you still give you a +1, like you still give, hey, yes, this can go live, because you expect that the person will either reply to your comment and explain why they did it, or they will just fix it in a way that's okay enough, and they don't need your okay afterwards to like make sure it's now fine, you know. And a part of that, all the other processes we have are pretty much just to enable everybody. So we have a simple Kanban board, which means like a simple to-do board where everybody can see where what everybody's kind of working on. So you have a feeling for that. We have very few meetings. We have per project, like we split work in projects where like usually 1, 2, 3 developers and other people in the team work on one project. There's like 1 meeting a week for this. And if you have something important to discuss, feel free to discuss it up front in Slack. But otherwise, just prepare for that meeting and like make the meeting efficient. And we have 1 team call per week, which is on Monday. And that's all the meetings we're trying to do. If there are additional meetings needed, that's okay, that's fine. But we try to have like the mandatory meetings to the bare minimum.
Okay, thank you. There was a question up front.
By the way, if you want any honest feedback about our development and engineering process, like Rado, are you still here?
He's up there.
Yeah, like this is one of our, like Rado is like one of our main engineers. So
he does everything. He told me beforehand.
Yeah, that's actually true. Like everybody who thinks he's full stack, talk to him. Like, like there's barely anything he can't do. Okay. But like I speak PR and I speak like only nice things. And if you want the honest truth, talk to him.
Okay, there was a question up front here first.
Yeah.
So what is the perfect moment to launch? Is it first users or when you have your first users? Yeah, on ProductHunt, of course.
Yeah, so my personal opinion is, like with ProductHunt, like to answer your question, is when you feel that you have the, like from your side, it's like when you feel that you have the communication good enough that people get it and understand why this is special, why this is unique, why it's worth their time, why it's worth sharing it afterwards, why is it worth trying out. From our point of view, when it's at a point that our users can fully trust that they can actually try it out. So it's not vaporware. Like it's not like a landing page with like a email form. Like sometimes we have those, but we try to avoid them. But it's actually, I don't know, there's like a video or there's like a beta sign up, even if the beta is restricted, but there's some way that people can actually experience it. And it's actually for real, and it's not just like some crazy, I have a cool new idea, make a landing page, I post it, and let's see if people want this. But it's actually something people invested their time and brain power into. This is the ProductHunt point of view. My personal point of view on launches itself is, nowadays I think of launches more like like loops that go in waves and get bigger and bigger. So you have sometimes you have like you constantly launch stuff, like, but sometimes you have moments where you try to combine it with a PR launch. Like sometimes you have moments where you just like try to say, like, even though this feature launched last week, you now give it a PR push, you know. Or sometimes you have the opportunity to get into like some press outlet, and therefore you just like time the launch with this press mentioning. But these are like the PR aspects of it. What a lot of people do is they think of their launch as if it would be like one thing and it's only once and then never again. In reality, you launch constantly new things, and the like most of the press won't hear about you the first time you're around. You know what I mean? So in the end, what you do is like you do these loops. And what we kind of try to do with ProductHunt is we try to give you like the first loops should be like bigger, and this is what we try to do. But in the end, it's like you will constantly launch, and like the fear of like not launching yet, and like waiting and waiting and waiting, and then nailing your launch, and then on your launch day you just realize it's a lot of more work ahead of you. That's like, I think it's kind of dated for me personally, and the main reason why it's for me personally dated is like every time I actually build something, and then I don't know why, I think my brain is kind of weird in that way, but like I build something, I ship it. And the moment it's live, even if I had it like on test environments 5 times before, the moment it's like on the production system, I look at it and it's like, oh, that's wrong. We should do this different. And then a friend of mine pings me and is like, something really obvious. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Damn it, you know. And the longer you avoid this, the worse from my point of view. But like to answer your question regarding ProductHunt, when your communication is actually nailed, like when you feel that you have it, you get it across. And one of the biggest problems most startups actually have is you look at it and you get that they have a lot of features, but you don't really understand what they're actually solving for me as a human being, you know.
So marketing communications is a big issue.
Product positioning, I would say.
Position it. Okay, next question. Like, what is your do you have any role models, and what would you like to like recommend, blogs, readings, whatever you think gives you a step forward?
I have a lot of role models. I have them, like a lot of my friends are actually role models to me personally, and personally it's weird, but like I believe that almost, I would say everybody, but like a lot of people disagree, so let's say almost everybody is pretty amazing at least one thing, and maybe they just didn't discover it yet, but like there's like a lot of inspiration in like pretty much everybody you meet. And so like I like most of my role models are actually friends of mine. I'm also like a huge fan of Steve Wozniak for the main reason that he's like just one of the most amazing human beings out there. Like he's the co-founder of Apple. And yeah, like a few others. Books I would recommend, I should read a lot more. So I'm the worst person to ask. One of my favorite books in the world has the most embarrassing title ever. And it's written in a completely different time, like it's written in the 50s, 60s, and it was meant, back then there was like this craze of like super hardcore high performance managers who like only try to think like machines. Therefore it had like this really weird title, and it's nowadays even more weird. So the name is like How to Win Friends and Influence People. But it's actually not about that. It's just like a good way to get actually the right people interested, apparently. And essentially what it tells you is like to cut your crap. Like that's the TLDR. But it's one of the best books I know. A part of that for interview techniques, I highly recommend the MOM test, which, because everybody who ever spoke to clients and potential users of the product most likely biased them, even subconsciously, and the way how you frame a question will result in how they will actually answer. And the MOM test by Rob Fitzpatrick is an very simple, like it's 200 pages, like or like even less. You read it like instantly. Very good framework. And the other book I would recommend personally is Lean Analytics, which is essentially the core idea that you have to think about growth and analytics in different stages differently. And they have like a very simple framework to follow, and I really recommend them.
Okay, any more questions? There's one on the back there, and then we go forward. So, like, how did you get along with scaling the development team?
So we have a policy of hiring really, really slow, in engineering team especially. So whenever in case, like, or differently put, like a lot of startups actually burn the first generation of employees completely. Like they burn them out, they completely waste a lot of opportunity with great people just because they're not ready themselves. What we try to do, at least in engineering team, and also like in actually the whole company, but in engineering team we have to be even more extreme about it, is hire as slow as possible. And we have this policy of, in case of doubt, not hire, which we currently can do because we're not yet in this, I would say, crazy growth stage where you have to get to up to I don't know how many people in that amount of time. So we're like yet in this like in this amazing time where we can get stuff done with a small team. And everybody you hire will increase your management overheads. Everybody you will hire will be like a wild card if it works out or not, if it's like the right person and all this kind of stuff. Everybody you hire will need like onboarding time and so on and so on. So what we try to do is we try to hire really rarely. Like like back then, for example, when we were looking for an iOS engineer, we looked like I don't know how long, and I passed on so many amazing people. I have a list of people I regret not hiring, but not because or differently put, we have positions who are available. Like we have right now this role, and we need it filled. And I meet I had to reject a lot of amazing people because they didn't fit that role yet. And in some cases you could hire those, but then you run, like in our case, you run maybe the risk that you actually burn your bridges with an amazing person, because like if you're not actually being able to do like your maximum output in your work, you get really quickly frustrated as a developer. So what we actually focus on is, with a smaller team, increase efficiency versus trying to just hire more people and get everybody busy, if this makes sense.
Okay, there was 2 more questions. There was one here and one on the back. You first. There was a couple of questions regarding your investments. Funny enough, for Silicon Valley investors, did you have break-even point? What kind of return of investment did you promise? Was the third one? If you're able to keep up with the time frame and the pace.
So the good thing is, I mean, when we pitched to investors, the transaction, like the revenue, wasn't the core of what like our business. So there's like a lot of companies where you actually have an transaction or like a very obvious money transfers as a core, and you actually the product is far enough that you can like iterate on growing that. In our case, what we had back then, like we didn't focus on revenue yet, and the good thing with experienced investors is they understand, for example, our model. Worst case, we can make an advertising play out of this, affiliate play out of this. Pretty much every idea we have, even like being the social app store, every idea only works if it reaches a very high critical amount of people. And the good thing with a lot of investors who are a little bit more experienced is they look for traction. And next quite obvious question is like, what is traction? Like, what does traction mean? And in reality, it means what you think it means. Like, it means what you believe is like the number one thing you should focus on. And now the question is like, do the investors agree? Like, is this something worth pursuing? And if yes, are you actually progressing? And in our case, what we focus on extremely is like making the product better. And the metric we use around this is what we call products discovered. And this means either people who found through or on ProductHunt a new product, and the amount of products they found. And then the active users are people who did it. And what we try to do is like the number one thing we try to do is to focus on this metric, because if we do this right, the products that get featured on ProductHunt will be more successful. The makers who build something will get more exposure. The people will actually, like, obviously we have more people finding stuff they were actually looking for, and it's like one of the metrics that kind of reflects the core experience of our product. So this is the number. This is like the main thing we currently focus on. We're in a lucky position that we raised like quite a big amount of money, with the core goal only to focus on growth and not yet to focus on the revenue channel. We're experimenting with a lot of the different revenue strategies and channels, but we're in a lucky position that this is not yet the focus. Yeah. Of course we do. Like we didn't do it like back then, but like
Question was about numbers only.
yeah,
for the
like
live stream.
the thing is like back then the main pitch was basically around the idea and the growth and the traction. But of course, like as the company progresses, you also like speak with your investors and like you make projections. Where can this go? Like if you go this way, that way, like you try to make forecasts. Of course you do that, but the funny thing is like, I mean, everybody who has used Excel here figured out that there's like this feature where you can just like take a cell and pull it to the right and the numbers get bigger. And if it's not big enough, you just change a few numbers and then you pull again and then the numbers get by far bigger. And so I personally don't believe in those forecasts. I believe actually in the traction that we had so far. And so yeah, this is how I personally approach it.
Okay, there was one question back here. It's going to be the last question on the live stream, but Andreas is going to be here for you for answering questions the whole night.
Make it count.
Yeah. So the question was about hiring again, and she was focusing on saying the right people, but in a distributed team that might be quite difficult. So how do you actually manage to hire the right people at the right time in a distributed environment globally?
I mean, the good thing about a distributed team is that you can pretty much get the best people no matter where they are, as long as they are actually willing to work for you. And so like this is actually like for us personally, it's a huge advantage because the biggest problem everybody in San Francisco have is like change the word of communication and international and whatever. Applicants must relocate to San Francisco, and everybody has this, you know. And like even Slack insists that you actually have to work from San Francisco office, and like even like companies that are building video call tools insist that you move to San Francisco. We're in the lucky position that because we already distributed and we were this like from day one, we can just like we know, for example, like we were opening our podcast section, and we had this really amazing guy who was like working in like in the podcast space. I don't know if this is a term, but like who was really experienced in this, and he was like pretty much willing to work with us during this launch phase of like several months to just get this going. But he wouldn't have moved to San Francisco because of that, you know. The same we had for games. We had like one of the most amazing game editors who was like just like, okay guys, I will like this is a project for the launch, like 6 months, and helping us in that time. Usually what we try to do is we try to differently put, like a friend of mine at Facebook, she explained to me that in Facebook you don't get somebody as an assistant, like back then at least, until it's like something you do, like at least it's something that's highly priority, which you need to do like so many times that you can't just get a person for only this task, more or less. In our case, we're not that extreme, fortunately, but like what we still try to do is like do everything ourselves as long as it's physically somehow possible. And then when we realize, okay, this by itself is growing and growing and growing, and we need somebody just to focus on that, then this becomes a role. That becomes like, this is the task, this is like the goal of this person, like this is like what this person has to like look at and also can actually influence. And then we try to create like reverse engineer profile out of this, and then we try to hire this person. The good thing in the lucky position we are in is we can be really picky because we have like distributed possibilities and distributed team.
Okay, thank you very much. Give a big round of applause. There's a couple of things, quick one. First of all, in July we always have a little break, which means that the next Startup Grind is going to be in August. It's not yet fixed if 18th or 25th of August. It's going to be Alexandra Wesner, the ambassador of the US in Austria, who herself has started 2 companies.
So she's amazing.
She's a pretty amazing
like
woman.
I think everybody who met her can agree.
Yeah,
like I honestly believe she's not the ambassador from America in Austria. It feels more like she's actually working for Austria.
Yeah.
Because pretty much every startup thing I notice somehow has to do with her.
Yeah,
it's insane.
I'd like to thank our sponsors, of course. First of all, BVideo, who supports us with the live stream. They're doing a great job. Doris can't be here with us today, unfortunately. always great to be here at Sector 5. It's like the perfect location to do this meetup, and we're very grateful that it works like a charm. And of course, Holvi, our like banking partner, who actually does a good banking app. I've got 3 accounts with them. See you again, not in July, but in August. Thank you very much indeed.